Hey everybody, Brian Shea here, talking today about technical debt and why it isn't always a bad thing. So, first off, just to define the term technical debt, when we're working with a Salesforce system and there's something about that system technically that wasn't sort of well built or wasn't built as per best practices, and it's having an impact on either the performance of the system or the ability to build new features on the system or the user experience of the system. If technical debt isn't always a bad thing, when could it make sense to kind of incur technical debt for kind of the greater good of a project? So I'll give an example to illustrate. So let's say we're working on a large scale project. We're coming down to the launch date and we identify a requirement for a kind of a new piece of automation. And that piece of automation can be built sort of as a standalone flow, but really, ideally, it should be incorporated into an existing flow or into your existing Apex code base. So you might decide as a shortcut to build this one piece of automation as a standalone, understanding it will allow you to hit your launch date for your project, but it's something and ideally should be incorporated into your larger automation base going forward. So that could be an example of smart technical debt. The important thing here is when you take on technical debt, you want to be really clear about what you're taking on. Like with financial debt, you want to know sort of the terms of the loan. You want to know the interest rate. You want to know what you're paying back. And in the case of technical debt, it's really the same thing. So I want to give you sort of a few things to keep in mind when you're looking at potentially incurring technical debt. So number one, you want to be clear that you actually are taking on technical debt, that you actually you're making a shortcut in your implementation. You're not building it as per best practices or in a scalable way. There's a lot of technical debt out there that was incurred or created because the person implementing it just didn't build it to a high quality. So that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about very consciously taking a strategic shortcut in order for a greater good, like launching a project on time or hitting a really important deadline, something like that. So the first thing we want to do is when we are incurring technical debt is be very clear that we're doing it and why we're doing it. So that's number one. Number two, you want to be clear about what the business impact, what the actual business system impact of incurring this technical debt is. It could be something like, well, if we start hitting higher and higher data volumes, this is going to become a bigger problem. Or this is technical debt that we'll need to resolve before we bring a new business unit onto the system, or something of that nature, where you really want to be clear in terms of, to extend the metaphor, when this technical debt should be paid back by, when the bill will become due for this. That's number two. Number three, you want to be clear about what it would take to fix or resolve that technical debt. How long would it take? What would the work look like? What would the cost of that work be? You want to be really clear about exactly what that project or mini project would look like. In my case of the standalone flow that should be incorporated in, would it just involve updating our sort of main automation base and retiring the standalone flow, or would there be any data impacts where data would need to be cleaned up? Obviously, anytime we're talking about object model changes or data changes, that's a much, much bigger, much more higher risk effort than if we're just sort of retiring one particular piece of automation, all things being equal. So you want to be really clear about how you're going to clean this up, what's involved, because you don't want surprises later on. Those are the three things that you should really keep in mind when you're taking on technical debt. And what you want to do before making this decision is you want all your stakeholders to understand that you're taking out this loan together, and you really want to be clear about what the terms to pay the loan back are. Just like when you get a mortgage and you sit down and you sign all these papers, you want all the stakeholders to be clear about the decision that they're making together and what the benefits of that decision are and what the costs of that decision are and how that debt is going to be paid back. So I hope this helps. I hope this helps you think about technical debt, and hope you have a great day.